Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the program. My name is James Ludi, and I'm an adult services librarian at the new Canaan Library. Tonight, we are excited to welcome Marc Lapadula, Yale University Senior Lecturer of Film and Media Studies. He is a playwright, screenwriter, and award-winning film producer. In addition to teaching at Yale, Marc has taught at Columbia University's Graduate Film School and created the screenwriting programs at both the University of Pennsylvania and Johns Hopkins, where he won outstanding teaching awards. He has lectured on a wide range of classic and contemporary films nationally in institutions such as the Smithsonian, the National Press Club, the New York Historical Society, and others, and has given lectures in Canada, England, and Mexico. He produced the film Angel Passing, starring Hume Cronin and Teresa Wright, which premiered at the Sundance Film Festival and won, among many other awards, the grand prize at World Fest Houston. Other movies he produced include Mentor, starring Rutger Hauer, which premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival. Marc, thank you so much for being here tonight. The floor is yours for the lecture.
Well, thank you, James, and thank you for all that you do for people like me and for the community. I mean, the librarians are the great unsung heroes in our lives. My wife is a former librarian, and I'll tell you, I have so much respect for everything you do. So tonight we're going to actually do something a little different from what, well, maybe is what you normally see me do if you see me before. For the most part, I kind of deal with films in, like plural in a presentation, and I kind of go across a range of filmmakers or scenes. We're going to concentrate on one film tonight. It's the masterwork of Alfred Hitchcock, made in 1960, called Psycho. Hitchcock was born in 1899. When he made Psycho, he was turning 61. In 1960, being 60 was like being, well, 90 today. 90 today is the new 60. Back then, 60 was like, you're really ancient. What are you still making movies for? Especially when you're going to try to make a movie called Psycho, and those of us that have looked at the script and read notes on it, looks like you've really lost it. But Hitchcock is not someone who was ever interested in resting on his laurels. Yes, he was very successful in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, kind of owned them in a way. Was able to make highly personal films within the studio system, unlike many other filmmakers who either went crazy or had to sort of drop out and try to do it on their own. That would then be people like Stanley Kubrick, Orson Welles, others, Sam Peckinpah, that were crucified within that system. They felt their artistic vision was severely compromised. Somehow Hitchcock, was able to, well, manipulate his handlers as well as his audiences. But when it came to Psycho, where he wanted to, quote, signal a bold new era in filmmaking, which is pretty ambitious for anybody, especially someone 60 years old in 1960, the studio did balk. They said, we're not really going to get behind this. And this person who had done so much for so many, as far as the money he made for them, was now forced to produce the film out of his own pocket. So the film cost about $875,000 in 1960. That sounds like a lot of money maybe for 1960, but movies are notoriously, one movie of his, notoriously expensive, and that would still make it a low budget film in that era. Right? Today, things are shot on digital. We're all shooting on film back in 1960. Again, extremely expensive. So he's going to use his crew from Alfred Hitchcock Presents. He doesn't want to have any interference, because if he has some famous cinematographer, he's going to have to, well, let that cinematographer be the artist that cinematographer sees himself or herself to be, well, mainly in those days, himself to be. And he didn't want any competition, because he wanted to make a particular style and kind of daring film, and you'll be the judge whether he accomplished that mission, whether he indeed signaled a bold new era. But we're going to go right to the movie. We don't have a lot of time. I wish I did have more time. I mean, I can spend hours on this film, certainly 2 hours. It really needs 2 hours. I'm going to try to give you the greatest hits in the short time that we have tonight. So we're going to start at the beginning, always the best place. Now, you see from the opening credits, and it's a much longer opening credits. Everything is going to be sort of shortened in places tonight so we can get through it. But they're very riveting, with that music by Bernard Herrmann. Bernard Herrmann had worked on other projects with Hitchcock. On this one, he was told by Hitchcock, who was known for being pretty parsimonious, since I'm paying for the film, I'm not going to be able to give you a budget for a complete orchestra, a full orchestra. And instead of Herrmann getting kind of pissed off, he just decided to take the challenge. And so this entire score is made with strings only, right? Violins, violas, cellos, double basses, and that is the masterstroke. Many great artists work extremely well within the limitations imposed on them. Hitchcock is imposing limitations on himself with a limited budget, and yet wanting to do something so ambitious as to signal this bold new era. So he's going to use this crew from Alfred Hitchcock Presents because they are also going to be cheaper to hire than some famous cinematographer and like a film crew. Film crews are known for being, well, costly delays, right? He's going to get it right on the first or second or third take at the most. And the reason he's going to be able to do that is because television crews coming out of the 1950s were all primed to do, well, live broadcasts, live studio dramas like Studio One, Kraft Theater, General Electric Theater, Playhouse 90. There can't be a second take because this thing is live from New York in your living room. So he had the perfect setup. Now, with this opening credits, there's this suggestion things want to be like, well, come together and be made whole. It's a quest for wholeness. That's the quest for, well, certainly Janet Leigh's character. She's someone who's, well, paid her dues and she would like to get married. But what happens in the first scene of the movie, the first real dialogue scene, she's with her boyfriend who informs her that he's too broke to marry her, that he's got alimony payments from his first wife. He's inherited his father's debts, and now he doesn't want to kind of put her through this. But here she's invested a lot of time and her love and her, this commitment, only to be, well, in 1960, well over 30, and just kind of abandoned, right? So that kind of quest for wholeness, where she wants to, well, have a love in her life that she can marry and have a child and start a family. Well, that quest for wholeness has been ripped apart in that first, scene that we see. The setting of the movie is in Phoenix, Arizona. That's where it begins, right? Her name is Marion Crane. Both of those are bird names. A phoenix is a bird that rises from its own ashes and comes back in its pristine state, regenerates. That's important. Hitchcock will later make, 3 years later, a movie called The Birds. And The Birds is like, maybe you might say, an obsession with his. But the fact that she's a crane, Marion Crane, and a crane is a wading bird. It's like a swamp bird. This is all important. This film is powerful and smart because, yes, on the surface, it has some absolutely mesmerizing, thrilling, terrifying sequences. And its editing and its, mise en scène, everything is just really top notch. But beneath the surface, there's a really rich subtext. And that's what we're going to try to really unearth today. So she goes back to her boss's office, her place of business. And here's a client who is sitting on her desk and kind of flirting with her. And she's just been rejected by her boyfriend. There's going to be no marriage in the cards for Marion. Even her name, she wants to be married, Marion Crane, at least not in the foreseeable future.
In this house for my baby's wedding present. $40,000 cash. Now that's not buying happiness. That's just buying off unhappiness. I never carry more than I can afford to lose. Count 'em.
I declare.
I don't. That's how I get to keep it.
Okay, so again, this is only a section of this scene, but a lot of things to unpack in just what we just saw. She gets a guy who's a client, of her boss's, and the guy says that I'm buying my daughter a honeymoon dream cottage. Oh, wow. I'm not going to have a honeymoon dream cottage. She's getting married. Oh, wow. Right. When Hitchcock's daughter comes up after, that's Patricia Hitchcock, her co-worker, when the men go to the back office where the boss's private office is, she goes, he was flirting with you. He must have seen my wedding ring. So they're really kind of rubbing her face in the fact that she's not married, right? But that money, which when she says, I declare, Hitchcock's daughter exclaims, he says, I don't. That's how I get to keep it. So I want you to remember that the money, the $40,000, is already stolen to begin with. It's his personal money, right? Whatever that means, whatever ill-gotten means or ill-gotten gains generated that money for him, the money is not legitimate, okay? And $40,000 cash in 1960, that is an incredible amount of money to have on hand. For example, some of the best baseball players in America in 1960 were making $40,000 a year. That was considered, you know, the superstars. Yeah, maybe the greatest, Willie Mays, was making more, you know, by then, but 40,000, a ton of money. So here we have, she tells her boss that she's going to deposit the money in the bank like he wants her to, but instead of coming back, she has a headache. I mean, she just got rejected by her lover. She just got this pushed in her face by everybody in the room that you're not married and we are, right? Or somebody is getting married, but you're not. And so she wants to go home, you know, to sort of deal with her headache.
Aren't you going to take the pills? They'll knock that headache out.
Can't buy off unhappiness with pills. I guess I'll go put this money in the bank, then go home and sleep it off.
Okay, so if I were to do a quiz right now and ask you, did you notice the paintings on the walls behind Janet Leigh in just that moment? Most people would kind of say, you know, I don't, because I'm looking at Janet Leigh. She's so beautiful, and I get it, I get it. And she's foregrounded, so you're not really looking past her, but it's kind of hard to miss them. They're so big. The painting above her desk is gigantic. The painting that is, well, next to it at the unoccupied desk right before the exit door is the same size. All the other paintings that are over Hitchcock's daughter's desk and around her, very small, but they're all paintings of farms and fields and forests and verdant settings and houses and, you know, that kind of thing. Country houses, cottages. This is what's over Marion's desk, which is unlike every other picture in the office that we see. It's a picture of a giant desert. Suggestion is she's being associated with barrenness. Well, I mean, I guess, you know, a woman has a biological clock, certainly in 1960, with the conservative 50s on your back. If you're 32, 33 years old and you're not married and with a baby on the way, you're probably destined to be an old maid. That's what we probably have to think Hitchcock is saying. But what about the other picture? Well, the one where she exits is a tree-lined lake. It's the antithesis of the dry, barren desert, where there's no water, no verdant growth of foliage or vegetation. That setting, the lake, is where a crane would have its natural habitat. I want you to know that her shadow is beneath the surface of that lake, because when she is killed by Mother in the shower in Psycho, spoiler alert, we're assuming you've seen the film, she's then dispatched, her body is dispatched to the lake, and it goes beneath the surface. So here he is foreshadowing what's happening to her, right? And it almost looks like the way her arms are raised, like she's suddenly already beginning to be under attack here. But eerie, eerie, eerie. So we assume she went to the bank. This is the scene that follows the one you just saw. She walks out and we get to this scene. What was she wearing in the first scene that we just saw? Hopefully you remember that. She was wearing white. If you saw the whole movie, when she was with her boyfriend, she wore white underwear with the white dress that she has on. She's lying in her white bra and her white slip on the bed, and it's clear that the two of them, in the very first scene of the movie, have had sex. When we listen to the conversation, we realize they're not even married. This is sort of racy for 1960. Again, with the conservative 50s on the back of this film. audiences may certain members of the audience might have disapproved of Marion. They might have thought, well, she's a woman of ill repute. I mean, having sex out of wedlock. If they, she, they, he, whoever they are, thought that in 1960, they did it by imposing their own morals and their own judgment on her character, right? They don't really know her, but they decided that, well, she's a slut, let's just say. That person has decided that. They have overridden the white underwear that she's wearing, which is, well, the sign of purity, chasteness. So Hitchcock knows one thing that audiences do all the time and love to rush to. They look for any opportunity to rush to it, and that's judgment. And he's going to make a movie that's going to punish an audience for having that, well, let's just say, unappealing characteristic. You know, we see a guy with a white hat, so we immediately think he's a good guy. Someone with a small black hat, so he's a bad guy. Well, maybe he just likes a black hat, right? And yeah, people with white hats always shoot straight. They'll never shoot you in the back, but a guy with a black hat will. That's sort of the shorthand of cinema, but that's not real life, right? Because in real life, like what she's wearing now, the black underwear, now she's got black underwear on, and we're wondering, well, why did she change, right? You're going to see that she's going to put on a dress that's gray. Well, maybe in real life it was red, maybe it was maroon, I don't know. But in black and white cinematography, it looks gray. And yes, right, there's one thing we know about black and white films, there are at least 50 shades of gray inside these movies. And so now she's going to be a little more nebulous. So whereas in the first scene, if you did want to impose your moral judgment on her and deem her a woman of ill repute because she has been in love with this man and was devoted to this man and thought they were going to get married and they slept together, but you disapprove of it, that's on you. You went over the white underwear to get to that place, right? I mean, you could have had her in leopard underwear, right? You didn't have a lot of choices in black and white films. And in 1960, white, you know, I guess that nude color that would look maybe gray, black, or leopard. And leopard would have said, oh, of course, she's a wild woman. But he puts her in white. Now she's in black. So what is he suggesting? Well, maybe her darker side is taking over. Because what does she look at right here? And notice how there's no voiceover. There's no dialogue. We did not see her go to the bank. We just assumed that she's been to the bank. And she dropped off the $40,000 for her boss, who was uncomfortable having it in the office over the weekend, that much money, right? You know, a Major League Baseball salary, you know, for a year, all in one place at one time. Take it to the bank, he says. Okay. So we say, well, she hasn't gone to the bank yet. That's unusual, but maybe she had a headache and she just wanted to get out of the clothes she was in earlier and put on fresh underwear and now is going to the bank. But this pan left tells us that's not the case. She's running. She's running with the money that is actually lying on the bed, which is going to really be associated with, well, probably the amazing sex that she's going to have with her boyfriend when she knocks on his door unannounced. He lives in a different state. He was visiting her, right? And he's flying back, right, home, has no idea that, you know, she's going to be coming to him by car, you know, a 2-day drive to surprise him with the $40,000. But when she gets there, it's not a 2-day drive, but a day and a night, whatever it is, several-hour drive. When she gets there, the black underwear is also extremely sexy. And the fact that the money is not on the counter, not already packed, not in her purse, but lying on the bed is very, well, let's just say, heavily freighted with meaning, right? Sexual innuendo. And I want you to see to her, you know, the left of the screen at the top, the shower head looming ominously over her shoulder. Already that shower head is foreshadowing what's going to happen to her once she gets to the Bates Motel. So she drives out of town. She sees her boss on her way out of town, which means she doesn't make a clean getaway. He's going out drinking to celebrate the sale of that honeymoon dream cottage. The boss kind of pauses for a moment, because I thought you were going home with a headache, but he already looks a little drunk. And we sort of get the sense from the hints that are pretty clear in that opening scene, if you see the whole scene, that he's a secret alcoholic, but not much of a secret if you really know him. So he's probably not even going to sober up until Monday morning, and he's going to maybe remember that he did pass her on the street. But what this tells us right from the get-go, Marion Crane is not what she appears to be. I didn't think she would be someone that would steal $40,000. I want to remind you, it's already stolen money by a jerk who was, well, when he was sitting on her desk and flirting with her in 1960, there was a term for that. Oh, right, business as usual. Today it would be called sexual harassment. She'd probably make a lot more than $40,000 in the settlement, so this thing wouldn't go to trial. Okay, so anyway, what we do have though is a picture of her. She's now sleeping in her car. She got tired, so she pulled over to the side of the road, and it kind of looks like the picture over her desk. It's as if she's driven into that picture. She's getting deeper and is absorbed by that picture. But that picture, which we're thinking of as barrenness, is really a picture of death. And that's where this character is going. We think that Marion's our main character, but what she is an elaborate introduction to the main character of this narrative, who is Norman Bates, played by Anthony Perkins. Anthony Perkins was originally up for the role in 1959, just 1 year earlier, for the role of Geraldine in Some Like It Hot. That role will eventually obviously go to the great Jack Lemmon. Anthony Perkins will have to wait 1 more year before he does a character that actually dresses in women's clothing, but a totally different tone, totally different type of film. He looks like a hawk. He looks like a bird.
Now hold it there. In quite a hurry.
Yes, I didn't intend to sleep so long. I almost had an accident last night from sleepiness, so I decided to pull over.
You slept here all night?
Yes. As I said, I couldn't keep my eyes open.
There are plenty of motels in this area. You should have, just to be safe.
And I just want you all to listen to him. Take heed to what this cop's warning is to her, because there's plenty of motels. You don't want to be sleeping on the side of the road where it's so dangerous. You want to be safe in a motel. Right. Yeah. Now, we have the rain coming down. When she's in the shower, the water's coming down. When mother comes in, she's going to have a knife that's going to be back and forth, chopping back and forth into her body, right, stabbing her. Already we got the blade of the windshield wiper foreshadowing what's going to happen to her. The Bates Motel is spelled differently, but it's like bait, luring victims, innocent victims, right, to come stay there. And who runs this place? Well, I guess that's a good question. She's wondering who runs this place. She looks up in the house and she sees mother in the window, second-story window. Now that house is iconic in film, but as an artist, cinematic artist, you stand on the shoulders of giants. So no matter what, if you're a playwright, you stand on the shoulders of Shakespeare, Racine, others, right? The great Greek playwrights. If you're a filmmaker, you stand on the shoulders of, well, today you stand on the shoulders of people like Hitchcock, right? And Kubrick and others, Bergman, Kurosawa, others. Hitchcock knows to draw inspiration for that house from what it was, a really interesting painting made in 1925, and it was painted by Edward Hopper, and it was called House by the Railroad. That's a house that looks like it has, well, secrets. That was the inspiration for the Dark Secrets. That was the inspiration for the Psycho House. Now, Norman, who is the proprietor of the, motel, refers to them as cabins, not rooms, which is also interesting. Cabins are more isolated. He's more isolated. This is a motel that's doing very poorly financially because, well, they moved the main road. She's off the main road. Get it? She's stolen $40,000. And so she is, indeed, going into an area where this is getting, well, dangerous. When she checks in, it looks like two people are checking in to his one. He's like outnumbered, right? Everybody's two to his one. Boy, he would like to be maybe equal, or like, he would like to be 2-2, just to catch up. When she is talking to him after the tour of her motel room, she's being reflected in the bureau mirror. There's two of her. It's not just some accident that we have this shot set up like this. And to reinforce just how solitary, like a lone cabin, like a lone pioneer, a loner that he is, a lone eagle. And he does look like a bird. He does dress in black. And he is a bird of prey. We're going to see that he stuffs birds. And the birds that he stuffs are all birds of prey. Raven, owl, those kinds of things. It all seems to come together. And when you look at him, yes, the number one being over, behind his head, he's one to her too. But he does have a reflection. Hitchcock is not going to have him, though, set up in a shot in front of a mirror like the others, because his second self, or his reflection, if you know the movie, is his mother. That woman you saw up there is not his real mother, right? It's him in her clothing. So the world doesn't know this. So this is not something you can parade to the world. You got to keep it a secret, something you know kind of only to yourself. And your victims know it, but they're, well, murdered by the time they kind of fully realize it and process it, but then they're dying in that process. And so the secret remains, right? So Hitchcock does give him a reflection. I want you to just look at the window, which becomes a mirror. It's also got a shade on it, like it's cloaked, it's something hidden, it's pulled down. When he's talking, he's kind of laughing out of the side of his mouth. He's talking out of the right side of his mouth that the audience sees. But the reflection in the mirroring, mirrored window pane, or the mirroring pane of the window, looks pretty sinister and serious. So he does have this duplicitous, this duality, right? That all the characters seem to have, right? Because nobody's what they appear to be. He doesn't appear to be a serial killer who would dress in women's clothing. He's really charming. He's really shy. In fact, the irony is, up to this point, we've been really nervous with the cop, and when she's trying to sell her car and pick up a used car because the cop saw her car, right? But then during the middle of the transaction, that cop comes back from somewhere, just like the Phoenix, and right in the middle of the transaction, we're like, oh my God, right? And so everything seems to come back in this movie, and everyone's not what they appear to be, and he certainly doesn't appear to be what he really is, but here's a hint of what he really is in this scene. And in retrospect, it's probably the funniest line in the movie, one of the funniest lines in the history of cinema, in retrospect, but it would have to be the second time you see the movie because you don't know this the first time.
I've caused you some trouble.
No, mother, my mother, what is the phrase? She isn't quite herself today.
Yeah, that's an understatement. She isn't quite herself today. He murdered her several years ago with her mother, with her lover, and kind of took over her personality. So there is his mirror reflection. You absolutely saw him talking out of the right side of his mouth, smiling out of the right side of his mouth, but his left side didn't do that. But it's not you don't really pick that up unless you were known to look for it. You probably wouldn't have seen it. It would have been just like those paintings on her wall in her office. You don't remember them. They were gigantic, so big, with the one behind her of the desert. If you didn't see the frame on the one side, you would have thought she was in the desert because the sky was above her head. It was as if she was inside that picture. And well, in many respects, she is. and getting deeper into it all the time.
Eating in an office is just too officious. I have the parlor back here.
All right.
Sit down.
Maybe I need to go back to my room. I forgot something and lock the door or get in your car and get the hell out of there. How many of you would stay? I wish she hadn't stayed, but she does. It's a very long scene. And we're kind of wondering, hey, listen, this has been a suspense thriller. Why are you spending so much time with this guy? Isn't this something that's like cut to the next day? You're driving, you're going to get to your boyfriend, knock on that door. You know, he's going to take that dress off you, that black underwear. You're going to spread that money out on the bed. You're going to make love, and then you're going to go to Mexico, and you're going to get married. It's going to be, that's what we're waiting for. And yet, well, that's not the story. In fact, it's not her story. As I said, she's the elaborate introduction to him. He's the story. And Norman Bates is based on a real life serial killer. I don't know how many knew that, but his name is Ed Gein. And he's such a notorious serial killer that he spawned at least 3 horror franchises. Psycho being, well, the most interesting incarnation by Hitchcock, but there would be sequels. Richard Franklin will do Psycho 2 in 1983, which is pretty interesting. I mean, it's no Psycho #1, but it's a pretty interesting sequel. But then after that, there'll be several that are just not very good at all. And even Anthony Perkins will direct 1 or 2. We have also, though, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That's the same character in some incarnation. We also have Silence of the Lambs. That's a franchise, more than 1 film. And it's also the Ed Gein character that spawned that narrative. Psycho does not have cannibalism in it. Doesn't have all the elements of the real Ed Gein, but it has enough, believe me, that are, well, plenty disturbing that he didn't need that. Hitchcock is the master of suspense. That's what he's known for. That's his moniker, but it does pay him a disservice. Because if you're only interested in being the master of suspense, you should make very sort of surface movies. I mean, don't worry about depth. Just worry about what happens right in front of your eyes the first time you see it. And once you've seen it, the suspense is over. There would be no reason to ever see it again because now you know what happens in the shower. But you see, Hitchcock said himself, and I quote, that all great films should be seen at least twice. First of all, he's no dope. He made several great films. And, you know, he was thinking, well, why not get double, triple box office receipts, right? So he's smart. But there has to be a reason why you want to see a movie like this a second time. It's because the first time you're more, well, it's a Brechtian thing. You're more, well, that alienation effect that Bertolt Brecht, the German philosopher, right, playwright, talked about. You're at first, when you see something, you're emotionally engaged. And that's the suspense first time you see it, all the suspense. That's how you're engaged. Second time, when you know what happens, you're more intellectually engaged, which is what Brecht was after. Well, Hitchcock says, you know, my movies exist on both levels. I want them to be a great thrilling experience the first time you see it. And I want them to be an even more interesting sort of journey of sort of introspection as to what is really going on, an examination of what's really going on in this film, because it's for the second and third viewing really that he's making this movie. He's somebody that has really something to say, and it's beneath and behind the surface, which is extremely compelling, right? He can do it all. So he did say that officers are too officious. Let's eat in the parlor. She did step back, wanting him to come into her room. He had given her a tour, but when you are giving a tour to someone who's just checked into your motel, that makes sense. When you say, have you eaten? She said no. And, you know, well, I'll get some food for you. And she invites you into her room. That's kind of sexually charged. And doorways, thresholds, especially in the 50s, extremely Freudian, right? So he just balks. He just can't do it. He's just too, well, sexually repressed. So he says, why don't we go into the office? And then he gets into the office and says, well, why don't we go into the parlor because offices are too officious. And so she goes into this parlor where it will be more comfortable, more private. That's where she sees various pictures on the wall. The Rape of the Sabine Women is hanging on the wall. The other painting that's really significant that he's going to take down is called Susanna and the Elders, plural. What is that? It's a, well, story of a young maiden who is sexually blackmailed by two older men who spy on her. They're voyeurs while she's bathing. And well, when he takes down the picture, he's doing it because he's watching her as she's about to go into the shower and bathe. So it's a direct reference to Susanna and the Elders. I will also say that, well, let's just actually go to the...
Thank you.
She will stay. She has this conversation with him, and she decides, you know what, I made a big mistake. And even though she signed in under an alias and she said she was from Los Angeles, California, at the end of this conversation, she says her real name, Marion Crane, and she's from Phoenix, Arizona. She says, I have a long ride back to Phoenix. I got myself into some trouble and I need to get out of it. Thank you, because he kind of made her see kind of the mistake that she made inadvertently, right? And he's a little creepy at times, like a little sad and all this, and at times like very charming, but he's a lot of things in that long scene. But at the end, he sort of says, oh, can't you stay a little longer? She says, no, I really got to get up early. I have a big drive back. He said, well, I'll make breakfast for you. And he says, well, I'll be up early. Well, I'll make it first thing, blah, blah, blah. But after she leaves, instead of us going with her, the movie stays with him. Already Hitchcock is transitioning to, well, Norman, who's really our chief protagonist. He's going to go check the sign-in log for the motel. He's going to see that she did lie to him. Marie Samuels, her boyfriend is named Sam Loomis, so she was using kind of a variation of his name and the wrong city. So he's kind of not looking too happy, right? And so he goes to the wall and he's listening. We're not yet knowing what's going on back in her room. We've been following her the whole time. It's strange. But see, what I want to say is that word officious, like offices are too officious, let's eat in the parlor, that's significant. Why? Because, well, let me be very specific with you as to what officious means. Like if I ever come back and talk about a film that maybe examines the Spanish Inquisition, or if it's one where there's a Catholic ceremony and the priest sprinkles incest all over everybody, you see, I just made some kind of mistake in each of those examples. For Pacific, I meant specific. For imposition, I meant inquisition. And for incest, I meant incense, right? The incense that priests, right, sort of make everybody cough. I'm a Catholic, I'm allowed to say that, during certain ceremonies. A person who does that is a malaprop. There's a term for it. It comes from a play by Richard Sheridan written in 1775. No, it's not his other famous play, The School for Scandal. In 1775, he wrote a play called The Rivals. Richard Sheridan, British playwright, where there was a character named Mrs. Malaprop who was concerned about contagious nations, but she meant contiguous nations that will come across the border, take over your country, right? And so she makes all these funny slips. And so Archie Bunker was the one that inspired the one on the Spanish Inquisition and the Catholic priest sprinkling incest. That's from All in the Family. People will use the malaprop device. He uses it here, but it does sound like it means office-like, office-y, too official, too sterile, but that's not what officious means. Officious means cloying, meddlesome. And if there's one adjective to describe how mother is portrayed in this movie, and I mean everybody's mother, from Hitchcock's daughter referencing her mother to, and if let's say there's time in the chat, you want to write down something, well, then have me come back and talk about Hitchcock's daughter's reference to her mother in that opening scene. But also Marion's mother, there's a reference, and certainly everything that is mentioned about Norman's mother, she's, ultra officious, meddlesome. So definitely interesting slip of the tongue, so to speak. In that scene in the thing, he does say, well, that's really a false, and he's trying to say fallacy, falsity, he almost says phallus, right? Because he's so sexually turned on by her, but at the same time, because of his relationship with his mother, because of everything that he is really repressed, right? Sexually. So that's a Freudian slip right there when he almost said phallus. So here, this is what he does. Now, something very interesting happened right here. So I'm going to go right back. When he takes on Suzanne and the elders, we're shocked that he's a peeping Tom. And our first response to this is, Norman, how dare you violate the privacy of our chief protagonist, Marion Crane. You put that painting back. Don't you be looking through that peephole. I want you to put that painting back. Norman, put that painting back. And so as he's looking, we're like, put it back, Norman. Would you put it back, please? And we're watching him look now, right? We want him to put the painting back until we get this shot, which is Norman seeing exactly, through his eyes, what is inside on the, on the other side of that wall. And now I kind of forgot, what was I saying? Because I'm kind of liking what I'm seeing. And so I'm watching this. She's getting undressed. And now, wait a minute. Wait, whoa, whoa, whoa. You can't show me that and not take it away from me. And look at the beautiful shot. Look at that beautiful shot of Hitchcock's. And incredible. And now we missed everything. He saw her naked and we just get the robe put over her great body. Look, we went from being, hey, you shouldn't be doing that. Put the painting back. Oh my God. Hey, oh shoot. Look what I missed. All within seconds. Look what the audience just did. This guy is the master manipulator. I want to remind you that in this shot, the second time, see, the first time you were just given the shot. You didn't ask for it. You were telling him to put the painting back. But once you saw it, then you wanted it back. So once you saw it, you wanted to be inside his point of view. You wanted to be inside his head so that you could look through his eyes, Norman's eyes, and see her undressing. And in that moment, if he went to a mirror, in this moment, because we're looking through his eyes, the audience's face would be Norman. We're his reflection. Oh my God. That's why we're not seeing like all these shots of the reflection, because the audience is his reflection. And what does that mean? Well, we're going to say more of that at the end, hopefully if we have time. But this is incredible. Incredible. That one painting, I don't know if you see it right here, the lower one of the bird, when he comes down and sees the carnage mother, caused inside in that bathroom, he turns away from it. He's revolted by what he sees, and he knocks that lower bird picture off the wall. It lands on the floor. Hitchcock is showing us that Norman knocked her off, but we think Mom did it. He looks up towards the house like a bird. He looks like a bird there, and he looks pretty pissed off in Mother's direction. So here's the really famous scene. This is like a 3-minute scene, but one part of the sequence, or 3-minute, if he's in the shower, is, well, in the average film, there are 600 edits in a film, feature-length film. About 600 times the camera's going to like change angle, right? There'll be an edit, right? Now we'll look at close-up. Now we'll go to a 2-shot. Now we'll go to a new scene or whatever. That's about 600 times in the course of a movie. Hitchcock has 78 cuts in 45 seconds in the shower sequence. It's unbelievable. And that's the willing, the sort of, the length that you're willing to go in order to create a bold new era in filmmaking. Now, this is the moment that changes everything. Why? Well, because in this moment, she's decided to do the right thing. She's going back. She's going to turn herself in. She's going to face whatever happened. She's going to, go into the shower now. It's like a baptism. She's washing away her iniquity, cleansing herself from her sin. This is a moment of grace. And it's here that Hitchcock decides to have this intrude upon such an important moment for her. Now, this is a very chilling scene. So, we will go to the end of it, right? And I'll say this. It happens about 1/3 of the way into the narrative. She's our chief protagonist, at least in our eyes, she is, the audience's eyes. And we just lost her. She's going to die here. We have never in the history of movies ever lost a chief protagonist 1/3 of the way into the narrative. That has never happened before, right? I also, in addition to being a moment of grace, washing away her inequity, cleansing herself of her sin, it is also this scene with the phallic bread knife, very sharp, that he's penetrating her body. This is a sexual assault. And that, you just can't get around it. So this guy who's so sexually repressed, who wishes that he could, well, probably, right, make love to her in what would be considered a healthy, right, conventional manner, because he is so damaged psychologically. He's so psychotic. This is how he, well, sexually makes love to his women who are his ultimate victims. So this had people fainting in the theater, this scene. And the knife doesn't really touch her body. At one point, maybe it kind of just gets there, but it's all beautiful. The music, it's all the editing. We're both killing her, being killed, and watching the two of them struggle. It's a very vertiginous editing job. Vertigo was a movie he made just a few years earlier before Psycho. So you are dizzy. There's the Hershey's chocolate, because that kind of has the consistency of blood and it's black and white going down the drain. It's the opposite way because Hitchcock's just being funny. It's as if it's South America. But look at the great visual stylist he is. See, this is what people forget. Just like when he's looking through that peephole, the way the light was coming, was going off of his retina, right? Amazing shot, really artistic. Look at this. Look at this match sort of dissolve right here. Wow. And she's not going to blink. We're hoping that she is. She's dead. He's going to come down and be appalled too by what he finds. We're going to identify with him. He's going to be just, well, doing what mother wants. Well, he's going to be doing what he feels a dutiful son should do to protect his mother. So we don't blame him for killing, we blame mother. But we don't want to see him get in trouble for what mom did. So when he cleans up the bathroom, he's extremely anal about it. And he's really thorough. And we kind of want him to be thorough. He kind of erases any evidence that that beautiful woman was ever even in that bathroom, much less, blood, spattering everywhere. And it was a massive cleanup. Kind of takes us through it in real time because he wants us to now start to identify with Norman. She's gone. We have to reinvest in someone. So Norman seems like the right suspect, right? To now we pull for him. This is going to be a really, well, let's just say bad choice on our part, because we don't really have, as Hitchcock is going to remind us, very good judgment as audiences. Audiences never had very good judgment. And this is what this movie's about. Audiences and their, well, poor judgment. Now notice how NFB 418, Norman Francis Spate, there's his initials on the killing, but we still think mom did it. He put the body in the trunk. And just like, well, right, when he was looking through that peephole, the second time he looked, we wanted to have his point of view. That would mean we'd have to be inside his head. That would mean that his face would be our face. And we're looking through the mindset, the point of view of a psychopath. We're inside his brain. We're inside his point of view. Here, he's going to do the same thing, Hitchcock, to even greater power and, well, let's just put it this way, sense of collusion now. That's a big word, right? We love that word, but Just watch. Car's going down. Norman put it in there. We definitely want to see it sink. I mean, that was traumatic. You know, I don't even want to even think about it. But then it stops. And see, that's the masterstroke. Like, oh my God. So now the audience has to make a decision. Well, what do we want to see happen? Before Norman was thinking, but now we've got to use our telekinetic carry power, right? Thank you, Brian De Palma, all those years later, with Sissy Space at Carry 1975. We've got to try to make that car sink because we all want to see it sink. Almost every single person that sees this movie the first time wants to see the car go down. Rarely is there someone that says, oh, I want to see it, you know, remain on the surface and get Norman in trouble. Because again, we think mom did this heinous killing. And he's just the innocent, you know, son trying to like cover up for her, you know, right. So now we all focus our energy, and after this pregnant pause, it begins to sink, and it will sink. But see, now the audience is part of it. Now we're part of this cover-up. There is collusion, right? Okay, so, and he's happy. So just like her shadow that goes to the bottom of the lake, you know, her body is going to the bottom of the lake. And, you know, there's going to be Arbogast, the detective, who's going to get on the case. He's going to be looking for her. I guess everybody's looking, he says, for a young woman who's got $40,000 in cash on her. But here he just goes to some random B&B, you know, some bed and breakfast. And the woman at the door tells him, no, there's nobody here. It's a montage. And all of them that he talks to, they're old, elderly women. And this one, like the point of view of who's looking, it's almost like the son is standing where we are, looking over their mother's shoulder at her talking to the detective. I have to say that that woman kind of looks like a man in drag. And you're going to see that Norman has the same identical collared dress and the same kind of hairstyle, wig, as this woman does, or this, whoever this person is. What is Hitchcock saying with this? Well, whatever it is that caused Norman to be Norman, normal Norman, everyman. If there's a situation where there's a domineering mother and the, you know, sort of fragile, emotionally fragile child, if it's the right incubation, we can have another serial killer on our hands. Because it's not some isolated incident. The world is full of serial killers over the years. Thank God, not so many, but if I start listing them, I can do a pretty long list before I run out of entries, and that should be alarming, right? Ted Bundy, Joel Rifkin, Jeffrey Dahmer, the Hillside Strangler, the Boston Strangler, the Golden State Killer, all these people, Ed Gein, all these people, right? The BTK killer, who also dressed in women's clothing, several of them dressed in women's clothing, whatever that means. But you see, I taught at Johns Hopkins. I've had people in my audience that are, psychiatrists at Hopkins, and, they can't explain it either. At the end, the psychiatrist does try to explain everything in this movie. Hitchcock didn't want that scene in there, but the studio really pressured him. So he gave us a scene where the psychiatrist does a lot of talking, but he really, what he comes down to is he says, this wasn't about him being a transvestite, right? That's what he says. Why did he dress like that? The boyfriend asks. And some guy just chimes in as like a police official. Well, he's a transvestite. And the psychiatrist says, listen, I'm the one with the PhD in psychoanalysis. So just leave this to me. And he says, this is not about sex. He says, this is about wanting to keep the illusion of his mother alive. That's what the psychiatrist says. And he says that Norman, what he really gets down to is that Norman just loved his mother too much. He was too obsessive. And all I can say is thank God for the rest of us, right? That when we grew up and became young men and young women, we loved our mothers and our fathers just the right amount. Not too much, not too little. See, that's not really an answer. Why did he become a serial killer? He loved his mother too much. Why did he become? Oh, he wanted to keep the illusion of his mother being alive. And he even says it's not about sex. This movie's all about sex. This movie's been about sex from the beginning. She's having sex with a boyfriend out of wedlock. This guy's sitting on her desk flirting with her, right? The cop comes back. Why? Because she's so beautiful. And when Norman sees her, he's infatuated with her. I mean, yeah, as soon as the boyfriend sees her sister, Lila, he's now interested in Lila. So therefore, what's sad is this guy wasn't worth it. She gives her life for this guy, and here he's already jettisoning the memory of Marion to be with Lila. And you name it, blah, 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 right through the board. Even when she goes into Norman's room, and she's like exploring the house on her own, she looks at his record player and she looks at the record, and it's such a quick take. You think it says erotica, sex, but it actually is eroica, the Beethoven symphony. So, but everything. So this psychiatrist gets it wrong. That's what's so brilliant about this. And here we go. Norman looks like this. I know we're wrapping things up, right? So he's in the same dress. That's what he does. He's going to try to kill Lila, but then the boyfriend comes in, Marion's ex-boyfriend, Lila's new boyfriend, and catches him from behind and gets a knife out of his hand. And yeah, everybody's shocked, right? Because, they all thought he was just like a sweet, sort of charming, shy, guy. And nobody's what they appear to be. Not in the world of Psycho. So now we get this final shot, well, 2 shots. Norman's staring right into the camera, staring into our eyes. He's our mirror reflection. This is what we would have seen had we looked into the mirror in that scene in the parlor when he removes the painting of Susanna and the elders. So what is Hitchcock saying? Is he saying that we're serial killers? No. He is saying that we shouldn't be so quick to rush to judgment. I mean, what he is saying is that Norman killed his mother, and I don't know how you would deal with that in an emotionally mature way. I mean, all he did was repress it. He kind of buried it in the swamp, so to speak. He swept it under the rug. And when you do that with something that's traumatic in your life, it comes back to haunt you in other ways. So how it came back, because he became so racked with guilt and remorse, that he started talking in her voice and dressing in her clothes and convincing himself until it drove him crazy that he never killed his mother, that she's alive, right? And now he's given over half of his life, even more than half of his life, to her. And this movie is really psychologically, pretty spot on, accurate, and really obviously disturbing for what this journey has been.
In the end, he intended to tell them I killed those girls and that man. As if I could do anything except just sit and stare.
So the mother's skull is superimposed over his face. And so that car is now coming back at you, body first, trunk first, body first. When it went down under the water, you never wanted to see it again. But like the phoenix, it comes back too, right? To haunt us, dredged out of the swamp, right in our face. And so we pay a price, because we are like Norman in that we too did not deal with the trauma of Marion's murder. We just, had him clean up the bathroom and swept it under the carpet in the sense that it was buried in the swamp. Arbogast, Norman, Loomis, these are the 3 men in her life. The first car that she has, that she trades in for the new car that has NFB on it, Norman Francis Bates, those initials on it, was ANL 309. A&L, Arbogast, Norman, and Loomis, 3 principal men in her life that could somehow be, connected to her with the money. It also spells anal, which is exactly how Norman is when he cleans up the bathroom, when he does everything. And the audience wants him to be anal. We're very anal in the way we almost guide him in that cleanup that goes on in real time. It's almost like a silent movie, this film, in so many sections. But Hitchcock comes from the silent era. He was also in Germany during the great German expressionist period of the 1920s. You see a lot of that with the light and shadow in Psycho, incredible cinematography from his Alfred Hitchcock Presents, right? Film, television crew for this film. But here it is going to now rip everything apart. Last 2 things I'll say: the movie beautifully reinforces a divided self, a split psyche, right? Battling personalities, 2 battling personalities within one mind, driving the mind crazy. Well, the screenplay, the story of the screenplay is 2 battling stories. And when Norman's story intersects with Marion's story, the dominant story takes over and just annihilates in its tracks Marion's story. But it's 2 battling stories. So where do you see a movie where its central theme is reinforced by the actual structure of the narrative? Also, just like the Phoenix, whatever it is that makes a serial killer become a serial killer, and we don't get an accurate, really, description of what, or prescription from this doctor as to, what really creates a serial killer. One thing we can be sure is that, like the Phoenix, that impulse that makes someone do those really heinous acts and perpetrates them against innocent victims, that will be back like the Phoenix. And so this is an amazing masterwork. You'll hear people on like Turner Classics talking about how it blew up film noir. I will go further and say to you, in my humble opinion, Psycho blew up cinema, not just film noir. This movie's too big to be confined to a single genre. It is film noir elements. There's a detective. I mean, it's black and white cinematography, beautiful use of shadow, downbeat, tenebrous themes, absolutely. But it's also a doomed love story. It's also a suspense thriller. It's also a horror movie in many respects, right? So it's a blending of genres. That's what makes it so absolutely incredible. What an achievement. So I will come off now and take whatever questions you have. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it. And I'm back with James.
Mark, thank you so much. I think I speak for everyone when I say fantastic presentation, an incredible examination of the themes and subtext in Psycho. I know that I speak for multiple people because people in the chat are saying that it's a fantastic presentation as well. We got a question here. Was Psycho a commercial success when it was first released?
Yes, and yes. Major commercial success, right? Mm-hmm. He wouldn't even let people go into the theater. If they entered the theater and they were there late, they couldn't go in. They couldn't disturb. Once the movie started, they were not allowed to enter the theater late. I mean, they really had to like toe the line. And he urged people not to tell anybody, critics not to tell anybody, people that went and saw it. I mean, I'm sure some did, but he really wanted people to be surprised. But again, that's just a smoke screen to kind of get you to really maybe come back, see it a second time, and really start to notice the real reason why he made this film. It is true. It's about 380,000. I see that in the chat. 40,000 might even be a little more today, but who knows? With inflation and all this going on. But thank you. Yeah. Are there any other questions, or is anybody?
Yes, we have one other question. We can only take a couple more questions, like one or two maybe. Just because I know it's late, and I want to let you get back to your evening. But here's one here that says, it's been said that Hitchcock was afraid of heights and many other things, and that he sometimes tried to introduce angles or things like that into his films that would kind of show those fears to create tension. Do you know if that's true or not?
I mean, yeah, he had all kinds of issues, and he wasn't afraid to kind of work out a lot of his issues, like on screen, investing elements of them in his characters, in the plots that he devised. Absolutely. And I mean, he did make Vertigo. Where does that come from? I mean, filmmakers make movies not because they don't relate to the material. By that point in his career, he's making what he wants, and he can make whatever he wants until it comes to Psycho, which was just so pushing the envelope that, everybody balked. But of course, once they saw how much money it made, look at the generation of films that now it is influenced. I mean, it's still influenced. There's so many references to this shower sequence in other movies. Again, if I were to, just say to you, just real quick, all right, this one, right? High Anxiety, Mel Brooks goes into the shower, and you're going to have the same identical scene, right? And so, and it's really funny. But it makes you then, what it really does is it makes you go back and watch the original Psycho, and you see that those, 78 camera cuts in 45 seconds, how masterful he was. But, so I didn't have time to show you that, but I will say, there's a lot more to this movie. I mean, there's a lot more in other scenes that we weren't able, so I really urge you to go see it again. When the sister is in the mother's bedroom, she goes up to some mirrors that are like showing her what's behind her. And I mean, the camera must have been at 1 degree off, so that if he had been 1 degree over, you would have seen Hitchcock and the film crew. But you don't see them. You see like what you think is directly behind her. And she suddenly is scared, and she turns, and like she just has other mirrors that she sort of scared herself. But what was really in the room breathing down her neck is the audience. We're the ones right up behind her as she's approaching that mirror where you know, it has like those hands right on the vanity. And so she should be scared of us because we get people killed in this movie. You know, we definitely right. So the audience is all over the place. The audience is referenced everywhere. Like in that scene, you know, the scene looking through the thing, making the car stink, you know, in the shower, all these, I mean, the audience is all over this film. So yeah, it's pretty amazing. Am I able to make an announcement? Is it okay? I think they said I could, yeah. If anybody is interested, I'll be giving a talk next Wednesday on April 20th for One Day University. And it will be on the greatest acting moments of the last 40 years. So it's going to be from like The Shining, Stanley Kubrick, all the way through to the present. And it's a 2-hour presentation. If you go to One Day University and you go in the chat, I mean, I'll put in the chat, but One Day University, and go to the premium section. The premium section would be where you'll find it. And you can just sign up and I'll see you next week if you want more of what I do. But I really had fun tonight. Psycho is one of my favorite things to talk about. And it clearly is a film that transcends the time in which it was made. It still has relevance today and is still extremely influential on upcoming filmmakers. We will look into, what is this? Do you ever do a presentation like this about Rear Window? I do lecture on Rear Window. And yeah, I love Hitchcock. But anyway, what I would probably like to do is come back and talk about another filmmaker, Nicholas Ray's Rebel Without a Cause, starring James Dean and Natalie Wood. That is an incredible film that has so much going on in it that you would be shocked. Because Hitchcock, you probably expect this kind of thing. Nicholas Ray, you just think that's like a teen rebellion, stupid movie. It's not. It's an amazing film. And Nick Ray is a heavyweight. He's a real heavyweight. He's not a Hitchcock. Who's a Hitchcock? Hitchcock's one of the greatest filmmakers to ever get behind a camera. But that next tier down, which is still where you want to be, if you ever aspire to make a movie, that would have Nicholas Ray in its lineup. So yeah. But thank you.
We'll be sure to reach out to you in the future for the program. This was incredible. I want to thank you again for coming and giving this little talk to everyone. And I'd like to thank everyone for coming. And have a great day.
Marc with a C .Lapadula at Yale.edu. Marc with a C .LAPA. It's just my name. Marc.Lapadula at Yale.edu. And I couldn't get the link on because I don't have the power. I'm not the host. But it's One Day University, ONE Day University. And the premium section, you'll find me. It's the first thing down. Greatest acting moments, April 20th, 7 o'clock. And they have a link that they send you. If you don't make it live, they'll send you the link to see it at your leisure, but you have to sign up. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Have a nice night, everyone.